Hi, it's State Representative Jim Walsh here for our regular update on legislative doings here at the Capitol in Olympia. In the last couple of weeks, I've been getting a lot of questions from people, frankly from women primarily, about personal safety and personal security. They are concerned about issues in the news. Some of it has to do with the current goings-on in the Middle East. Some of it has to do with things going on much closer to home in Washington State, where we've seen that crime rates, particularly violent crime rates, are way up. Homicides are up, and property crimes that can be violent, car thefts, carjackings, up also. And the questions that I am getting from people have to do with what can we do as individuals, as a state, to assure individual people's personal safety, personal security in a time when homicides are up and assaults are up and you see the news from abroad and there are horrible terrorist attacks going on. We need to restore Washington's long-standing respect for personal safety and personal security. Our state's Constitution, of course, in Article 1, Section 24, talks about the rights that Washington people have to defend themselves. And the language of Article 1, Section 24 is always important to me. It talks about protecting yourself and the state, which gets to this very interesting concept of, by assuring each individual's personal safety, a common good is created of general safety in the whole state. That part of the Constitution is often compared to the U.S. Constitution's Second Amendment. But I like the language and the approach of Article 1, Section 24 of the state Constitution even better than the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. But to the point of what we can do to restore that sense of personal safety, I have prepared bills that I will pre-file ahead of the coming legislative session that are going to undo some of the restrictions that we put on an individual's ability to protect herself in a violent world. And that specifically has to do with undoing restrictions about the ownership and purchase of certain kinds of firearms, as well as certain kinds of hardware to firearms, particularly certain kinds of magazines that feed rounds of ammunition into semi-automatic firearms. I think that these bills we've passed into law here recently that restrict an individual's right to keep and bear arms of defense of herself or the state, they need to be reversed. It's interesting to me, too, that in Israel, when the recent terrorist attacks occurred, that country had similar restrictions, particularly on the magazines for semi-automatic firearms. And one of the first things that its Knesset did, its legislature, was get rid of those restrictions. I think we can take a lesson from that. And again, closer to home, California has passed similar restrictions on people's ability to defend themselves. And those have been rejected by the federal court system, the Ninth Circuit, which is the federal court system that oversees the West Coast here in the United States. Now, the federal courts have not ruled yet on Washington's analogous restrictions, but we expect that at some point the federal courts will overturn those as well as they've overturned the California versions. So the atmosphere generally is good for restoring individuals' rights to defend themselves. And my bills that I'll present for pre-filing and early consideration ahead of the next legislative session here will help that good process along. The pendulum has swung too far away from individual rights, and we need to move it back toward the middle and let people defend themselves in a violent world. That's it for this update. I look forward to speaking with you again soon. Have a great week.